Similar to the one that killed the dinosaurs. It happened 5 times in the past 540 million years, but this time around, experts say we may be able to stop it. Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City University of New York and author of the new book, Physics of the Future, that we're going to be looking forward to the new book, of course. All right, Dr. Kaku, getting right to it. So which species would be most at risk?
Well, so far, if you analyze the last few hundred years of life on the Earth, human activity apparently has wiped out 1.4% of all plant and animal species, and it is 100 to 1,000 times faster than normal because of human population, development, pollution, overharvesting. And if you take a look at a zoo, many of the zoo animals that our children love, we may find them going extinct. The tiger, for example, may go extinct. Many of the familiar zoo animals, bears, and realize that 18,000 species are at risk.
And what about climate control? What role does it play?
Yeah, climate change is also involved in this thing. Independent of where climate change comes from, we see that the seasons are changing. Summers are getting longer, winters are getting shorter on average. And we always say that the early bird catches the worm, but that assumes that the worm and the bird are synchronized. Many of these cycles, the natural cycles, are being thrown into disarray, meaning, for example, droughts in China going on right now, perhaps famine in certain areas. So we humans cannot be divorced from what's happening in the natural world.
We can't be divorced. Is there something we can do about it? I guess you said pollution is one thing we can do. But so what happens, doctor, if there is not this sort of scientific pruning? Would the Earth be overrun with all sorts of creatures?
Well, evolution says survival of the fittest, and so far we humans are among the fittest. But we are also at the top of the food chain, the top of the pyramid, and it wouldn't take much to dislodge us from being at the top of the food chain.
So who could outrank us at that top of the food chain? You need to know what animals I need to look out for.
Well, in science fiction, of course, the insects take over. But look at something very simple. We are dependent on just a few crops, wheat, rice, and just a few crops, and if a blight were to wipe out these crops, then a huge chunk of humanity would starve to death because we're so dependent on just a few plants and animals for our existence.
So should we expand our menu, so to speak, or is there something else that the Earth provides that we should be looking at?
We should be wary of overharvesting. For example, overharvesting the oceans. We have drag nets, which in principle could drag the entire oceans. That's how efficient our technology is. Also, wheat production we have to worry about because water is the key to wheat production, and there are going to be perhaps water wars in the future.
And are you concerned about that water wars and that we may run out of water?
Well, there will always be water on the Earth. The question is the cost and what it would take to extract it, to desalinate it, to divert it, to irrigate. And so the cost of certain kinds of commodities could start to rise. So just because we're at the top of the food chain doesn't mean that we're invulnerable to what's happening outside where biodiversity is being threatened.
You mentioned, we have to go, but you mentioned insects could overrun the Earth.
Well, that's in science fiction.
Yeah, but the cockroaches, they never seem to go away, Doctor. We got to figure out a way to get rid of them. All right, Dr. Michio Kaku, thank you so much. And your new book we're looking out for is Physics of the Future.
There's a giant asteroid flying towards Earth. Detected by a Russian robotic telescope, it's one of the largest and most dangerous space rocks approaching our planet's orbit. RT's Murad Gaziev looks at the threat from the void.
Humanity's last experience with a large asteroid was painful. Almost 2 years ago, the Chelyabinsk meteor, traveling at 19 kilometers a second, exploded in the skies above Russia. The blast was dozens of times more powerful than an atomic bomb. But that meteor was only 20 or so meters in diameter, weighing about as much as the Eiffel Tower. This new asteroid is an entirely different story. It's 20 times bigger, the size of a village, weighing millions of times more. If this asteroid, for now called 2014 UR116, flew into our atmosphere, it wouldn't just burn up in the air and shatter windows. This would hit the planet's surface, potentially killing millions. But calm for now. It's not yet on a collision course with Earth. The danger is, as it passes near planets and the sun, gravity could alter its path. In fact, the Russian Space Agency, which detected UR116, has satellites watching just for such objects. And it's not only Russia. An American observatory a decade ago detected another similar asteroid. There was a big scare about that, if you remember. Apophis was named after the Egyptian god of evil, and asteroids its size hit Earth on average once in 80,000 years. NASA gave it a thinking about what to do if they confirm a collision course, though don't expect anything quite as dramatic as Bruce Willis leading his team of misfits to save the world.
It's been almost 10 years since little Pluto was demoted from being a planet, but today scientists from the California Institute of Technology have announced that they finally have solid evidence for a planet X, a true ninth planet on the edge of our solar system.
It is believed to be far beyond the orbit of Pluto, roughly the size of Neptune, with a mass 10 times that of Earth.
There are things out there, little icy objects that are orbiting in a funny way, and nobody was quite sure why. It seemed like there might be something with gravity pulling on them, but nobody quite understood. And finally, these scientists that you talked about took a really hard look at it, did simulations, calculations, and they came up with the explanation. It probably is this giant planet.
I think I read somewhere it orbits the sun every 10,000 to 20,000 years.
Right.
Is that why no one has seen it to this point?
No, that's not why. It's because it's so dim. It's so far away that even though it's big, it's very, very dim, and it'll be very tough to spot with a telescope.
I'm also fascinated at the idea that this planet could be so far out there and still our sun be the mass that is keeping it in the gravitational pull of our solar system.
Right, yeah, but no, it's true.
That's incredible. And so there was a thought at one point from scientists that when they thought that there was something beyond Pluto, that it might have been all the massive objects floating in the Kuiper belt, but it's not.
Right, so all those objects are out there and they have a lot of mass, and originally the scientists said, look, a planet is such a crazy idea, maybe it's the Kuiper belt itself that's pulling it on itself and making these orbits look funny.
And when we talk about the mass of this planet X, this ninth planet, being 10 times that of Earth, for those who are not scientists, what does that really mean, the mass of a planet versus Earth's mass?
Well, if you could put it on a scale, how much it would weigh.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it. And so it's bigger, it's bulkier, it's got more heft, it's got more gravity. It's this huge elephant in the living room, except we didn't know it was there.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that scientists haven't seen it yet because of how far away it is and how dim it is. Is there a way for them to get visual evidence?
Yes, so the biggest telescopes in the world can theoretically see this thing if they're looking in exactly the right place. And with the publication of this new paper today, they are now going to start to look in earnest.
How much further out there is this planet X than the rest of the planets in the solar system? I mean,
so Pluto we think of as the really out at the very edge, the very farthest thing that you could call a planet, even though we don't anymore. And
I'm still supporting Pluto's right to be a planet.
But this thing is 5 times further out than Pluto.
Fascinating. Is there any chance it's not a planet?
No, there's always. It's very foolish to say no chance because you just don't know what you don't know. But the odds are looking very, very good.
60 billion miles from the sun.
Yep.
Amazing stuff. Michael Lemonick, thank you so much. Fascinating stuff.
Great, thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Dwayne Brown with the Office of Communications, and welcome to NASA headquarters. Today, NASA reveals near-Earth asteroid findings and implications for future research from the agency's Near-Earth Object Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, in short, NEOWISE. Today's information and graphics can be obtained on the web at www.nasa.gov/wise. We will have brief presentations from my presenters, then open it up for questions at our NASA centers and the phone bridge. Before we get started, let me introduce you to today's speakers. First up, Lindley Johnson, NEO Program Executive, NASA Headquarters, Washington. Amy Meinzer, NEOWISE Principal Investigator, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Pasadena, California. Tim Spar, Director, Minor Planet Center, Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, Cambridge, Massachusetts. And Lucy McFadden, Scientist, NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. And with that, I'll toss it to Lindley to start us off.
Thanks, Dwayne. Thank you all for tuning in to hear about our progress with the Near-Earth Object Observation Program. We're here today to provide an update of our understanding of the near-Earth asteroid population and announce achievement of some significant goals in finding our nearest neighbors in the solar system. Over the past 12 years, our work to find near-Earth asteroids has largely been done by several ground-based observatory teams. But in 2010, NASA augmented those efforts by enhancement of the ground processing of the data being returned by the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer.
So one of the characteristics of NEOWISE is that it really was a fairly small telescope in a low Earth orbit. In fact, the telescope would kind of fit under your arm like this, so it's not particularly large. But by virtue of being in space and operating at infrared wavelengths, it's a very powerful telescope, and it turns out to be very good at finding asteroids and comets. Now, if you go to the first animation here, you can see a little representation of what WISE looks like going around the Earth. It's always pointing outward from the Earth, surveying the whole sky. And as the Earth goes around the sun, this allows the telescope to very quickly and efficiently carry out a survey of the whole sky. And in fact, it was so fast we were able to survey the whole sky twice in infrared wavelengths in only 1 year. And you can see here a little representation of the difference between visible light and the infrared light that WISE was able to see. So this was a very efficient and effective way of surveying the sky. And the original purpose of the mission was actually to study cool stars in very distant galaxies, and it's doing a great job of that. However, it turns out to also be very good at detecting asteroids. This is because it's using infrared light.
First of all, I find it really exciting that scientists continue to find things in the solar system, bodies in orbit around the sun, and objects that are close to our backyard in the near-Earth space. I want to congratulate the team for your successes, and I know from experience that in order to conduct a survey and to locate and discover new bodies from spacecraft missions requires a lot of planning, a lot of ingenuity, huge amounts of computing power, and then hours and hours, months of discussions with colleagues and poring over the data to validate the results.
Thank you. I realize you're focusing on near-Earth asteroids today, but there's been so much talk about the potential for finding a planet X or some sort of large body through the WISE survey. Can you comment on any status on that sort of search, or maybe even reassure people that planet X isn't coming to get them next year?
Yes, this is Amy Meinzer. I'm happy to answer this one. Planet X is not coming to get us. But we are looking to see if there are any other bodies in the outer part of the solar system with the WISE data. This is a very natural project for WISE. And so we're still working on it right now. We've obviously just returned a huge amount of data from the telescope that's going to take us a long time to sort through. But the initial results are very promising. You may have seen earlier results where we've discovered a new class of very cool type of stars with WISE. But the search is still on, and we don't think that there's anything that's hazardous in the outer solar system. We think that this is just a sort of if there is something out there, it would be a large body in a roughly circular orbit.
Our next caller, Denise Chow from space.com. Denise.
So when you say the initial results are very promising, the initial results are very promising. Anything else you wanted to say on that point?
We've actually been able to confirm the discovery of 100 new objects that are these very cool stars called brown dwarfs. And so that's very similar to what people are interested in looking for. So we've actually found some of these that are relatively close to the Earth, but none of these are closer at this point than the nearest star to our solar system. So it's a good start, though.
This was taken in the Montana sky yesterday. Now, to the right, up there at the top right, it looks like that could probably be Comet, potentially the Comet 45P Honda. We don't know what these other there's a black one over here. There's like a little black dot over here to the left near the sun. Of course, here's the sun. And right here, what is this? Okay, now there's been several pictures been surfacing of this little black, what looks like a distant planet or something that's been near the sun that's got people concerned. Of course, we know what this is. There's your poisonous chemtrails just happen to be rolling by. And there's a couple of other weird things that's out there. We're going to talk about this. This picture was sent to us by Richard. And Richard's a professional photographer, and he looked up in the sky and seen all these different things happening and said, what is that? And what is this? Of course, some of this could be explained with something to do with the camera, but he is a professional photographer, so he would understand lens flares and those types of things, obviously. There's some unexplained things in this picture in Montana that we need understanding for. Now, if you watch today's live broadcast, we will show this picture fully, and it will be perfectly clear on that screen that we're going to show you during my live broadcast. So don't miss it today. It starts at 12 noon Eastern. Starts at 12 noon Eastern at my website at www.paulbegleyprophecy.com. Come to my website, watch the live broadcast. We'll show you this picture, the full frame of it in clarity, perfectly clear. And maybe you can give us some help in understanding what these things are. I know that this right here is very curious to me. That's very curious to me. But there's a lot out there. Give your life to Jesus Christ. He's coming soon. I'll tell you one thing I'd love to see is the Lord coming soon. Okay? He told us to keep looking up, folks, for our redemption is drawing nigh. Are you serious? Are you serious? Asteroid! I mean, how close are they going to get, folks? And when are you going to know about it? Only unless I tell you, usually. But we've got an asteroid that's going to be another near-Earth encounter. It's close encounter of a deep space kind. Yes, it is. It's only it's only 10 meters in size, but that's huge. 10 meters, 30 feet, big rock. There's a lot bigger ones. But this thing is going to come by the Earth less than 200,000 miles from the face of the Earth. In other words, closer to the Earth than the moon. Okay? Shouldn't hit us. But nobody ever tells us about it. Okay? The name of this asteroid is 2017 BX. Now, it's fairly new. They just found it. At least they're giving us a little bit of a head start. It's going to happen Wednesday, January 25th. Okay? Wednesday, January 25th. We're going to have this close encounter with an asteroid. But we've already been having quite a bit of activity. Matter of fact, there was 14 fireballs that broke through the Earth's atmosphere last night. So in the middle of we got 7.9 mega earthquakes going on in Papua New Guinea. We got tornadoes tearing through the southern part of America, killing 16 people in Georgia, 4 people in Mississippi the night before. We've got all kinds of different types of storms and radiation and solar flares in the sun. And I'm just saying, folks, it's just we're continuing to see extreme weather conditions. And we may have tornadoes tonight in Florida before it's all said and done. So I need you to stay awake down there in the south. Not only Florida, but maybe even back up in Georgia again. But the southern states, stay awake. Stay awake, okay? Anyway, I'll talk to you guys about all of this tonight at Sunday Night Live. Starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. Now, we're going to have a powerful program because we will be praying over special needs and special prayer requests that are taking place. And we truly want you to know that God is answering prayer in a mighty way as we pray over these needs. I'm going to cover all of the different events: bus crashes, train derailments, volcanoes, tornadoes, solar flares, asteroids, earthquakes, and a whole lot more. Oh, and Madonna wanting to blow up the White House. What? Come on. Can't we ever get a break? Give your life to Jesus Christ, folks. We'll run out of time. Are you serious? Are you serious? Asteroids! Yes, in a few hours, we're going to have a close encounter with an asteroid just newly discovered, and it's asteroid 2017 BX. Now, this thing is going to go scraping by the Earth, even closer than the scientists in the NASA and other observatory satellites anticipated. It will be 0.68 lunar distance. That's about 150,000 miles from the face of the Earth, much closer than the moon. And we didn't even know about this asteroid till 3 days ago. And so I brought this up. Hey, just discovered, here it is, and it's going to go whizzing by in a few hours. Tomorrow, on January 25th, in just a few hours from now, this asteroid is going to come dangerously close to the Earth. Now, the probability of impact is a good chance it's not going to hit us. But when you don't discover an asteroid quick enough, you don't have time to read its speed or distances or its trajectory as well. You have less time to analyze it. We know how big it is. It's 10 meters in diameter, so it's a 30-foot rock. Huge. There's a lot bigger asteroids, but it's not a rock we want to get hit with. This thing hits us, it would be about 30 times more powerful than the one that hit in Russia in February of 2013. And we have no idea where it would land. So we don't want it hitting us. We don't think it will, but this is the kind of thing that all of us got to be aware of. Now, the Bible said there would be, that the stars would fall from heaven like a fig tree would cast its untimely figs when it's shaken of a mighty wind. And we know Jesus said a part of the end time signs would also be this: there shall be signs in the sun, which we're at a solar minimum, with a huge hole in the coronal hole that's allowing solar wind streams to flow right toward us, sending CMEs and ultraviolet rays. So these things are happening. Signs in the sun, there shall be signs in the moon and in the stars. Distress of nations with perplexity, the sea, the waves roaring, and men's hearts would fail them for fear, for looking after those things that are coming upon the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Then, here's the good news, then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when these things begin to come to pass, he said, look up, lift up your head, for your redemption draweth nigh. I'll be back with more current world events and how they relate to biblical prophecy. We're not going to get hit, I don't think, but it's close. It's close, and we didn't have much time to prepare. Are you saved? Jesus will come faster than this. You'll have no time to prepare, and you'll get no warning. And he's coming soon. Don't be left behind. Are you serious? Are you serious? We have some breaking news coming out of Yemen. The Russian ambassador to the nation of Yemen has just been assassinated after armed gunmen stormed the Russian embassy in Yemen and have shot and killed the Russian ambassador. Now, we just had just a few weeks ago, the Russian ambassador to Turkey was shot in public giving a speech at the podium at an art display at an art museum in Turkey, in Istanbul. And everybody's seen this. Now, this has happened, folks, just about an hour ago. Ambassador Vladimir Dushkin has been reportedly assassinated in the war-torn country of Yemen. The diplomat was reportedly assassinated in the capital of Sana'a. The assassination was reported by Saudi Arabian news agency. So I'm also getting this from our word on the street, very reliable source, who's right about 90% of the time on unconfirmed reports. And we actually received this information from him first. I did not run with it until at least got a couple confirmations. I have got these confirmations out of the Middle East. Heidi has received those, and including a Twitter account, but at least 2 Saudi Arabian news agencies, and now 3 news agencies out of the United Kingdom. There is some reports that Mr. Dushkin is not dead, but most of them say he was shot and killed and assassinated. The Russian embassy in Yemen has reportedly said no one's been shot, and that's what they're telling NBC News at this point. But again, the Washington Post said that it had not spoken to the duty officer at the embassy in Yemen, and he had denied there had been any attack and said the ambassador was fine. But now, that was before other reports started coming in that yes, he has been shot and killed. Mr. Dushkin was appointed by Russian President Vladimir Putin on August the 16th, 2013, and he's been the ambassador for Russia in Yemen. So word on the street is he was assassinated and killed. And there are Saudi Arabian news agencies reporting that he is dead. We have also news agencies from the UK reporting that he is dead. But the Washington Post is saying that NBC is still saying the word they got from the Russian authorities out of Moscow that he is not dead. So that's where we're at. I am going to give you more on this information at my backup channel. If you go to coming_apocalypse, I'll give you even more of an insight of information we have and keep you updated on this story. So go to my backup channel, if you will, at coming_apocalypse. And that's where all the updates on this story are going to be today. I'm telling you, we're living in the last days, and the Russians are being targeted. The sanctions that Obama put on them, the confiscation of their 2 intelligence compounds, these 35 diplomats that were kicked out of the country. He did an executive order just the other day, and there's several Russian businessmen, their assets are being frozen and stolen, confiscated. Okay, now Russian ambassadors are being shot dead in different parts of the world, especially the Middle East. So, and then the United States has just moved 3,600 U.S. troops into Poland, along with 87 tanks and over 100 and some armored vehicles along the border of Russia. Now, it's getting serious, folks, and we got to see what this really all means. And we're just 6 days away before a brand new president is coming into the United States, the 45th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, to be inaugurated on Friday. Will he get in? You got Rosie O'Donnell's calling for martial law and a military coup of the government. Are you serious? And there's going to be 700,000 protesters coming to Washington during the inauguration. This is not good, but this is where we're at. We'll keep a close eye on all of this. We're living in the last days. Give your life to Jesus Christ. Go to my backup channel. Subscribe to it, please. I need you to subscribe to it. Protect my backup channel, if you would. Coming_apocalypse.
And it is 100 to 1,000 times faster than normal because of human population, development, pollution, overharvesting. And if you take a look at a zoo, many of the zoo animals that our children love, we may find them going extinct. The tiger, for example, may go extinct. Many of the familiar zoo animals, bears, and realize that 18,000 species are at risk.
And what about climate control? How does that, what role does it play?
Yeah, climate change is also involved in this thing. Independent of where climate change comes from, we see that the seasons are changing. Summers are getting longer. Winters are getting shorter on average. And we always say that the early bird catches the worm, but that assumes that the worm and the bird are synchronized. Many of these cycles, the natural cycles, are being thrown into disarray, meaning, for example, droughts in China going on right now, perhaps famine in certain areas. So we humans cannot be divorced from what's happening in the natural world.
We can't be divorced. Is there something we can do about it? I guess you said pollution is one thing we can do. But so what happens, doctor, if there is not this sort of scientific pruning with the similar to the one that killed the dinosaurs? It happened 5 times in the past 540 million years. But this time around, experts say we may be able to stop it. Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City University of New York and author of the new book, Physics of the Future, that we're going to be looking forward to the new book, of course. All right, Dr. Kaku, getting right to it. So which species would be most at risk?
Well, so far, if you analyze the last few hundred years of life on the Earth, human activity apparently has wiped out 1.4% of all plant and animal species, and a chunk of humanity would starve to death because we're so dependent on just a few plants and animals for our existence.
So should we expand our menu, so to speak, or is there something else that the Earth provides that we should be looking at?
We should be wary of overharvesting. For example, overharvesting the oceans. We have drag nets, which in principle could drag the entire oceans. That's how efficient our technology is. Also, wheat production we have to worry about because water is the key to wheat production, and there are going to be perhaps water wars in the future.
And are you concerned about that Earth be overrun with all sorts of creatures?
Well, evolution says survival of the fittest, and so far we humans are among the fittest. But we are also at the top of the food chain, the top of the pyramid, and it wouldn't take much to dislodge us from being at the top of the food chain.
So who could outrank us at that top of the food chain? You know what animals I need to look out for?
Well, in science fiction, of course, the insects take over. But look at something very simple. We are dependent on just a few crops, wheat, rice, and just a few crops. And if a blight were to wipe out these crops, then a huge